I love Joy's work. I have read a couple of books since I last talked to you. I'm digging into her dissertation, but I haven't read the whole thing yet. But the way she approaches Aurora, the word for cursed in
Yeah.
Genesis, and is just beautiful and aligns directly with my work.
Welcome to the Eden Podcast, where we true the verse of Genesis 3:16, and we discover that God didn't curse Eve or Adam or limit woman in any way.
Welcome to the Eden Podcast. I'm Bruce C.E. Fleming, your host, here on Tru316, and our website is Tru316.com. And we're the home of the Eden Podcast, and we have a special guest today. Our guest is Dr. Dawn Lewis Sutherland. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, how are you?
We're good. We're good. Dawn is a Bible scholar and author. She is an adjunct professor in the School of Divinity at Liberty University, specializing in Old Testament and ancient Near Eastern studies, the philosophy of religion, and ethics. She holds a Master of Divinity degree in Christian apologetics and a PhD in Bible Exposition. She's also pursuing a second doctorate in law and public policy. Her latest book, From Babel to AI, by Wipfenstock 2025, examines the identity, AI, and the imago Dei. She's a longtime group exercise instructor. That's an interesting story. And is married to Lewis Sutherland, and they traveled to Scotland a while back. And you don't know this, but I grew up on Sutherland Avenue.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so I'm interested. So what's the Sutherland connection, and where'd you go for that?
We went up to, I believe it was called Balmoral Castle, is the Sutherland Castle in the Highlands. What we found out was they were originally Nordic, and they're called Sutherland because they moved south from Norway into the Highlands of Scotland. So it's Sutherland, if I can do it with a Scottish accent, and it got Americanized to Sutherland. So, fun fact: he's actually somewhere along the line a cousin of Donald and Kiefer Sutherland.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know any of that growing up, but I always had to explain it's with a U, Sutherland. Yeah. Avenue.
Yes, and I spell it everywhere I go. I usually go Sutherland.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have to say Fleming with one M, so
Right.
so those British names, you kind of have to be careful sometimes. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, we want to welcome you now. It was through the land of group exercise that we first met each other or made the connection. How did you do that? How did that work out?
I've been an instructor at the Y for 15 years. It was just a hobby of mine. I was working out 6 days a week on my own, and one of my favorite instructors left or was leaving, and she said, "You should take over the class. You've been doing this long enough." And I decided to give it a shot. And since that, the story's history, because I've been doing it for 15, almost 16 years now. So I just really love it. Most of the classes I teach right now are dance fitness focused classes. So we do cultural dances from all over the world, from African dance to Polynesian to Latin to all sorts of Latin dances. So I just really enjoy it. And I like helping people. We are beings of tripartite structure, mind, body, and soul. They're all together, and one's healthy, the other needs to be healthy as well.
Now you've got two children at home. Do they get involved in the dance with you?
My son does, surprisingly.
Yeah.
My son really likes to dance.
Yeah.
My daughter, not so much. She's very musically inclined, but she plays the trumpet. So she's a trumpet girl. And it's funny because her name is Selah, which is a musical connotation in the Bible. And then she turned out to be very musical. She picked up a trumpet when she was in 6th grade and got invited to the marching band at Liberty Christian Academy, which is really early because she's just really talented. But my son likes to go dance with me every once in a while.
Well, I would relate more to the trumpeter in your family. That's what 4th grade, I started trumpet. So
yeah, they didn't offer it until middle school, but when she picked it up, she fell in love. And now she's in 8th grade and she's front and center in the marching band with her brass. So really proud of her.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's hear we've got a couple of questions we always ask, and we'd like to ask you about your faith story, how you came to know Christ and began to grow in him.
My early faith story is really not that exciting. And I say that with a little jest. I was a foster kid. I was in the foster program, and I don't remember any of that because I was adopted when I was very, very young by the family who, and I was born and raised in the church. You hear all the leaders in the church say, oh, unstable meeting. I hear all the leaders in the church say, I found Jesus in, August 3rd of 1953 at 8 a.m. in the morning. And I never really had that kind of faith story. It was a slow roll for me. I just always loved Jesus when I was a little girl, and grew up in the church. So I was always a little jealous that people got that really magical kind of supernatural spiritual story, especially being raised Pentecostal holiness. And it wasn't until later in life that I got that story. And it was after I, as a teenager, young adult, kind of ran away from my faith. And when I met my husband, we rededicated our lives together. And that's when I had that moment, that special, this is how it happened for me. When we rededicated our lives together at a church. But yeah, I was always a little jealous that everybody had that story. And I was like, I always just knew Jesus. So
So when you rededicated your life, how did life change at that point?
well, we did not have children yet, and we were in a large church, and the pastor was just amazing. And he always talked about, it's not about just saying that you're a Christian. And I think that's where I had gotten. We had gone back to church. It was after my young adult life, but I was just kind of going through the motions and just, we go to church on Sunday, go to church on Wednesday night, just kind of do the things. But he taught that it's a life transformation. And I like to say it this way: Jesus changes your want tos, not your have tos. It's not about following rule books. It's about, I don't want to do these things anymore. I want to live a life that's generous and giving. And it really started, Christianity and loving Jesus didn't just become, it wasn't just a church thing anymore. When we rededicated our life, it became who we were. And I never really had that transformational experience when I was younger. So this was really new for me. And we knew we wanted to have children together, and raising our kids in that kind of environment was not we were going to do that. We were going to raise them to love Jesus, and it just became who we were. Jesus changed our want tos, and it was just phenomenal. It was a great experience. But that was later in life.
So at that point, we hit the second question, which is your ministry story. So you rededicated your life and instantly decided to be a New Testament professor at Liberty.
No, that's not exactly how that happened.
No, okay, let's hear the story. How'd that go?
Well, the same church, that pastor was the pastor I was talking about, was on his way out, just retiring. He had been there for a long time. He's the one who founded the church. And he had a young pastor coming in, and they did this really cool setup where they taught 50-50 for a couple years, the young pastor and the older pastor. So one would preach the month of this and then the other, but you never knew because they didn't want, just to show up for one pastor or another. Anyways, that's a long story just to tell you that the younger pastor found out that so prior to my theological education, I was in marketing, and I was the vice president of marketing for a defense contractor. And my husband and I, after we rededicated our lives to Jesus, I had decided to step away from my job to have children and stay at home with them. So that's what I was going to do. But this pastor pulls me in because he, part of leading a church is communications and getting out your stuff. So everyone knows that you exist and invite people to church. So I started volunteering on staff and eventually was hired in the same church. So I was on staff as the communications director. And I'm telling you all this because I think that people have a lot of this kind of story, and it's important for people to hear. That experience did not turn out well for me. And it wasn't because it was a bad church or a bad organization. Instead, it was the corporate-ization of the gospel. And I didn't like it. And there were some internal things that I was not comfortable with. that led me to step away. One of it is just over dedication. I had stepped away from my job in corporate to spend more time at home with my kids, to raise my kids.
Yeah.
And, if you've ever been on staff at a church, we ramped up to 3 services on Sunday. We went from 1,000 people on the weekend to almost 5,000 on holidays, and generally around 3,000. We were one of the fastest growing churches in America. And, it really required a lot of my attention. And it didn't turn out the way I expected it to. We were doing good, but sometimes you can do so much good that you're not meeting your own personal spiritual goals. I was very overextended. So I decided to step away from that position. In doing so, I was interfacing with pastors every single day, and I just had a lot of questions. It always bothered me that the Christianity is separated so denominationally, and there are differences of opinion and interpretations. And sometimes in some organizations, it's more tradition teaching tradition. And I wanted to know, I didn't want anybody to tell me what the Bible said anymore. I didn't want to take the English translation word for word. I wanted to understand the Hebrew and the Greek and the context and the ancient Near East. And because the Bible was written in the ancient Near East, and we don't read it that way. And so I decided just to go back to school to learn how to read the Bible. And it reignited, we talk about deconstruction now, like it's a real big buzzword. And I kind of did deconstruct from my mega church experience and didn't go to church for a while. It wasn't because I stopped loving Jesus. I was disenfranchised with the experience. And learning the languages and the context reignited that Holy Spirit spark that I just really just needed in my life. And I got excited. I never thought I was going to teach. I'd already had a career. It wasn't a goal. And God led us to Lynchburg. They hired me, and here I am.
So let me hear, you had told me, and we had talked earlier, what you're doing there. Tell us what's happening at Liberty and what your responsibilities are right now this year, for example.
Right now, this semester just started today, actually. So you're catching me on semester start day. Yeah. And I am mentoring some PhD students in the Bible Exposition program, which is the one I graduated in. I'm also mentoring, we have a newer program, a PhD in Applied Apologetics, and I am mentoring 3 students in that program. That's fairly new. It's a very exciting program as public apologetics becomes something that the newer generations are really leaning into and looking for. And I think that will lead a lot of people to Jesus. And I also lead master's thesis students in biblical languages and theology. So that's what I'm doing this semester, is leading these students in their dissertation processes.
Oh, that's great. So Joy and I, when we were missionary professors in French-speaking Africa, we knew we were going to teach classes, but I hadn't anticipated the fact that we would be directors of master's theses as well. And that's a great experience, and those students at that point are able to go deeper in a specific area. And then you're able, as a professor, to say, well, have you considered this, or have you come across this resource, or whatever. And there's some great conversations that go on, aren't there?
It's a wonderful experience. I'm probably learning more than I am giving my students. And that's just me being honest. I have one student who is in defense this semester. He's getting ready to defend. And he wrote on the Trinitarian structure of God and how it affects how we can use 12-step programs to affect Christian counseling. It's beautiful. I never thought of it that way. And he has really opened my eyes. There's another student looking at Jubilee years and comparing it to Leviticus and modern applications of taking care of the church, actively taking care of those who are othered and disenfranchised in society. There's just so much. And this is really how I think that a lot of people think about academics. We just sit around and ponder and pontificate, but really this is how things get discovered. And it happens after school too, when you go to conferences and it's just asking questions of each other. Did you discover this? Oh my gosh, that really is cool. Let me tell you about this. And just asking questions and going back and forth. And it's just a beautiful process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We got into this Jubilee year is talking about
Are you still there?
the city. Yeah, we're having some freezing here. I'm going to see if we can edit that and fix it. If not, people can say, "What was that?" So we'll make it through.
Okay.
So
What did she say?
yeah, we got into the cities of refuge. For first degree murder, you had the person that would just take care of things right away, punish and put to death the murderer in Israel. But there were the cities of refuge where if you were a second degree murderer, you could go. And I believe they were eventually set free on the year of Jubilee.
Yes. And this student is going through all of those processes. He's in his second semester, and it's going to be a really foundational dissertation for modern contemporary ethics and how we treat people in society. I believe it's going to make a big impact.
So when we go back to the Garden of Eden, Joy pointed out to me, they were both eaters. Adam ate and Eve ate, and the one punishment, bang, was death. But then there were the secondary conversations with the Lord, and Adam was a first degree eater and she was a second degree eater. He did it on purpose. He was rebellious. She wasn't, rebellious. She was deceived. So there was a curse put on the ground because of the man, the first degree eater. And there was no curse put on the woman because she wasn't rebellious. So she received a softer response from the Lord.
Yeah, I had not thought about that in terms of Jubilee, but that is a really fascinating topic. I love Joy's work. I have read a couple of books since I last talked to you. I'm digging into her dissertation, but I haven't read the whole thing yet. But the way she approaches Aurora, the word for cursed in Genesis, and is just beautiful and aligns directly with my work. My dissertation was on the redemptive arc of God and his redemptive arc through Imago Dei and theological anthropology, and that the Imago Dei was distorted and will be restored again eschatologically. And Dei did not get erased by first degree or second degree cursing, as the English translations say. Instead, it was restored. It was restored in the par excellence of Jesus Christ, who was the perfect image, and it will be restored in the end for all of us. And I think that's just beautiful.
Well, that's really good. I like for people to understand who's out there in the world, who's doing what. And when we discovered you were over there in the dance class,
that's right.
And then also over at Liberty, we thought, we want to introduce you to our friends on the Eden podcast.
Yes, I really am honored that you invited me, and I appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you very much. So you've been listening to or watching the Eden podcast. I'm Bruce C.E. Fleming. Our website is tru316.com, and we've been talking to Dr. Dawn Sutherland.
Tru316 Foundation is the home of the Eden podcast. Join us for $3.16 a month or more. Let's true the verses on the key passages on women and men. Go to tru316.com/partner. Tru316 is strengthening and encouraging many, and we're getting stories every day of lives changed through our ministry. We're the home of the Eden podcast, and we're getting the word out that God didn't curse Eve or Adam or limit woman in any way. Our volunteer help is wonderful, and we grow stronger with each new true partner who gives to the Tru316 Foundation so that we can cover the costs to do the technical work of the Eden podcast, to coordinate our True School workshops like the 2-week Eden workshop on Genesis 2 and 3, and to make the Tru316 Foundation function in its outreach to scholars and students around the world. You can give now with a one-time gift. And better still, you can join now and become a monthly donor. We call our monthly donors our true partners. Please join now by going to tru316.com/partner.